Howdy, healthcare people. You're listening to the Analytical IQ podcast. I'm Adam Lorton. In this episode, you're going to hear a presentation I gave to the Data Analytics Association at Ferris State University. These were enthusiastic young people who were getting ready to set off on their careers, so they were most interested in hearing about my early years, specifically how I got into data science. Obviously, this is not my first time sharing that story, but I'm always happy to share it with people who will get value from it. I had an ulterior motive in giving this talk. I wanted these students to consider careers in healthcare data. I think we need their help. And if the connection requests I got on LinkedIn after the talk are any indication, I think I was successful. If that kind of talk sounds like your cup of tea, then settle in with a tasty beverage. I'm going to have a sip right now. And let's get started. All right, so like I said, my name's Adam Lorton. I'm a healthcare data consultant, and the name of this talk is maybe a little too literal. Healthcare data, it's a career path you should consider. You know, thinking about where you guys are, and Brennan sent me a little read ahead about what you might be interested in, how I became a data scientist being early on that list. So I went to Grinnell College, and they call it the Jewel of the Prairie. So at Grinnell College, I was a varsity swimmer, and at Grinnell, you can't study anything too practical. Like there's no even engineering major. There's certainly no business major, and there's no marketing or anything like that. So you have to study pure subjects like philosophy or English or German or something like that. So I studied economics. And as I was reading a lot of books, this is 2007. What I'm reading is if you are interested in business, you have to go to China. Everything is happening in China, and you have to be there to see what it's like. So I did that, but China is a very big place. And how do you find a job? I'm sure there are lots of jobs, but how would you know which one to go for? But luckily, my college had this program called Grinnell Core, which is where they would, you'd be an employee of the college for 1 year as you went to be a teacher. So there were teachers in different places in Africa, different places in the US, and there was a post in Nanjing, China. So I applied for this position, and I thought I crushed this job interview. I thought I did so well. I thought the panel, there were like 5 people interviewing me. I thought they loved me, but there was this small little problem, which was that I was 15 minutes late to the interview because I had gotten caught up playing basketball with my friends. So as much as they might have liked me, they could never offer me the job, and so I didn't get it. So I had to quickly scramble for my fallback plan. Luckily, I knew the guy who was already in this position, who got the job, a year ago, and I reached out to him. He said, "Oh, you want a job in China? No problem. I get job offers every day. The market for foreign teachers, that's what they would call, and the way it works in China is there are English teachers who are mostly Chinese natives, and then they'll bring in a foreign teacher to teach you more about like authentic English and like American or British culture." So he said, "Yeah, I get job offers all the time. Here's one you might like." So easy peasy. I got myself a job in China, and there I went. And it was a really fun year. Got to teach some amazing students, got to have some cool times. And I was in this Settlers of Catan league. Do you guys, any of you know the game Settlers of Catan? It's a strategy game, and we loved Settlers of Catan so much. We played 125 games of it. We had a league with like a league table and a scoring system, and I promise this is going somewhere. But after my year in China, I had a really fun year, lots of partying, lots of teaching, and I was decided, you know what, I'm a grown-up, and it's time for me to get a grown-up job. So I did. I was able to secure a job at Morningstar, the investment research firm. And at Morningstar, I was a sales rep. So I was smiling and dialing. And as I came to progress through my career at Morningstar, I realized something, which was that I didn't actually want to be the 2030th employee at Morningstar. I wanted to be like the 20th employee at Morningstar. The first 20 employees at Morningstar got to be part of this, fun ragtag crew that built a game-changing business, and they were all multimillionaires. That's what I wanted. I wanted to be part of a technology startup. And so, I mentioned that I was in a Settlers of Catan league in China. Well, I got second place in that league. The guys who were in first place and third place, they called me up and they said, "Hey, Adam, would you be interested in this startup that we're a part of? I know you have a stable thing going with Morningstar, but we're selling brain training to professional athletes and military." Easy decision. I jumped ship and noticed that they, at no point were they asking me like, "Do you know anything about neuroscience?" They were just like, "Oh, we know Adam is smart and we can trust him." So they recruited me to this gig. And this is a lesson you'll see repeated more than once here. Brendan, you already have a job lined up, but for everybody who is thinking about how to get their job, I cannot recommend highly enough. And you'll see this throughout my story. I've never gotten a job through the front door. I've only ever gotten one through the side door. And it was always connections rather than credentials. So I'm working for this neuroscience startup, just living the dream. My first client is the Pittsburgh Penguins. They had just built a new hockey rink. So you can see there in the bottom right corner, they had these stacks upon stacks of flat screen TVs that they hadn't installed yet. They had their smoothie bar and their weight room. That was all cool. But I had this nagging problem in the back of my mind, which was, how is this company making any money? Because I was, as that problem nagged at me, it was later confirmed when I got the phone call from the CEO saying, "Adam, it's been really fun working with you, but we're not making any money and we've got to let you go." I didn't enjoy that very much. And as I started to look at the job market again, I kept realizing I don't want any of these regular jobs. I want this sports neuroscience thing to work out again. And then I made a really good decision. I talked to a mentor. Oh, you're not supposed to know who that is. This is my friend Lee. He was one of the guys who recruited me, first place in the Settlers of Catan League. And Lee reminded me, he says, "Adam, for 6 months we've been working together, and the whole time you've been complaining that our system, this brain training system, it generates all this cool data that we're not doing anything with." Well, sorry to say, you've got some time on your hands. Why don't you do something with the data? So I did. Now, I was proficient with Excel, but as you guys know, being proficient with Excel is not the same thing as being able to work with data. And this was, by the way, before there was formalized data science or anything like that. So what I was literally doing was I would record a macro in Excel, and then I figured out that on my right-hand monitor, I could watch the Visual Basic for Applications window and watch the code populate. So at first I just recorded macros, and then I saw what the code looked like. And then I started to write my own code. So I turned some macros into functions. And with those functions, I was able to make some data visualizations. And before, in a few weeks' time, I had made an entire program. So with one click of a button, I could go from a flat file to something that actually looked like a report, something that somebody might actually want to buy. And at this point, I made what I think was another critical decision, which was I realized I know all this great work I did, but my former bosses, they have no idea. So I made a hype video to show them all this dope tech that I had developed. And so the video would be quite embarrassing to watch today because it's, you're actually watching a spreadsheet transform itself. But I was really proud of the work, and I knew that this was my shot to get hired again. So I shared this hype video, and I think this is an important lesson for anybody who wants to work with data, is that it's not enough just to do the work. You have to figure out how to package the work in a way that other people can appreciate it. Okay, so I did all this data work. I made the video, sent the video to the boss, and then that thing that happens right after you send that text that says "I'm sorry"? Absolutely nothing. I got no response for a day and a half or something like that. But eventually, I did get a response, which was, "Hey, Adam, great work. We're so proud of you that you could do this. We still can't afford to hire you back. But keep it up, I suppose." But a weird thing happened at this point, which was, even though I didn't have my job back, I was kind of into this data thing now. And even though, I had shown them the product, I knew there were a ton of improvements that I could make. So I went to work making those improvements. And then eventually things worked themselves out. I got a call from the big boss, got rehired, and they said explicitly, it's because of your work on this this data stuff. This weird, you're a weird guy, Adam, but we're glad that you're into data because we're not. So you're hired. And so that was my 2-month crash course in being a data scientist. So I ended up spending another 5 years at that company, and eventually moved away from data, became a director of operations. And then eventually they did finally run out of money, and I moved on to the business of healthcare. At this point, any questions I can answer right now?
What was the process of taking the macros and making them into functions? Like, what kind of coding did you use? What kind of
Sure.
visualization?
So this is Visual Basic for applications. So this is like you can make the Microsoft Office apps work together behind the scenes using Visual Basic for applications. And so, I mean, when you compare it to like a beautiful language like Python, it's horribly clunky where you're declaring every variable and what type it is, and like, how is it is it an 8-bit int or more than that? So I'm writing all these functions that effectively they take a flat file and they make sure every column is formatted the way you want to format it, and then it's making a new sheet with a data visualization, a new sheet with another data visualization. And then I actually built another thing that would paste these as images into PowerPoint. So, I mean, completely rudimentary stuff as we, from where we sit today, us advanced data people. But this looked like magic, like witchcraft to my bosses. And it was, and because the main problem we were trying to solve was not make the most elegant technology possible, we were trying to give them answers about, or give our clients answers about what their brain training was accomplishing. And so we were, my wife's friend's bridesmaid sends a random email, hey, I've got something that might be appropriate for Adam, but you need to be a extremely detailed technical reader and a data person. I'm like, great, how many other people could even do this? But, oh yes. So again, connections over credentials. But, so the job was, there are these federal programs run by your United States government where they are trying to incentivize hospital safety. There are a bunch of these programs. They all have different rules and they apply to different time periods, and they have different methodologies for their data collection. But one of them, the most interesting one, is called the Hospital Acquired Conditions Penalty. And the really short way to describe it is, if your hospital has too many infections and safety events, then you could lose millions of dollars. So you can understand why it would be important for a hospital to understand how they were doing in this federal program. So they hired me to read the regulations and translate that to code, and I did. So what you're seeing here is a really simple data visualization with actually a kind of a lot that's going on behind the scenes. So what we did was we took all the publicly available data from every single one of the 3,000 hospitals around the country, and we normalized that to our own hospital. So we could see that that over this 2-year period, and what you're seeing a graph of 18 months into a 2-year period. Well, so you would expect that over the entire 2 years, a pretty good hospital of our size would have 70 of this type of infection. And a 50th percentile hospital would have 123. And so we can see that we're on track at this point to be a worse than average hospital in this program. And if you're a worse than average hospital in 2 or 3 measures in this program, you are at risk to trigger the penalty and lose millions of dollars. And so you can see this is another data visualization we built that we called the penalty risk thermometer. And it's not important for you guys to know what a CLABSI or a CAUTI is, but you can see down in the bottom left there that you can see this is using or with our hospital reporting 81% actual data, and with the remainder of the nation reporting about 50%. So, like I said, this is taking nationwide data, projecting it forward, and then projecting how our hospital does if nothing changes at our hospital. So this was a project I was incredibly proud of. And then here's where we get to the part where that I think you guys might be interested in. This work got me invited to a place where the big kids get to sit. Got me invited to the system senior leadership team to present, hey, you guys, would you like to lose millions of dollars? No problem. Keep doing what you're doing. If you would, but pay attention to this, because this is a penalty you've never hit before, but you're at risk now. And so with that meeting, we were able to make some systemic changes and actually improve care at the hospital, which felt great. And it led me to a realization, which was, imagine a doctor with 5 years of experience. A doctor with 5 years of experience is still in medical school. An analyst with 5 years of experience can be sitting in front of the system senior leadership team. So, if your goal is impact, yet again, I think, and this is no surprise to you guys, I think data is an amazing way to have a big impact. Privately, I say more impact than a doctor. And this is the part where I was thinking about going on for yet another 15 minutes about what's going on in healthcare today. But I'm going to stop it right there. That's my story about why I think healthcare is an exciting opportunity and how I got into it. And now I'd be happy to talk about whatever you guys want. I mean, I'm here to be a resource for you. And so if there's any question, no matter how, if you want to know what my favorite food in China was, happy to tell you that, or more about what software we're using, anything you want.
Yeah, I'd be curious. What are you using?
Sure. So at the time, we were using a product called Dimensional Insight. And Dimensional Insight does not get much publicity. It's a great company. So they make an end-to-end business intelligence platform. So it takes the data from the source systems, aggregates it into a data warehouse. They have this proprietary NoSQL technology called C-bases. And C-bases are super easy to put together because there's no relational aspect to them. And they're the incredibly high performance, especially for how much data is in them. And then in Dimensional Insight, they have a Power Analyst tool, which looks like Excel, but it's way deeper than Excel. It lets you what they call dive. It's called Pro Diver. And so you look at something really rolled up, like your entire hospital's finances for 3 years. Then you look at a single year. Then you look at a single service line. Then you look at a single diagnosis code. Then you look at a single patient. And you can dive in any order through any set of data elements and get the same answer. So it's really, really powerful stuff. And what you're seeing here on this screen, they have a tool for building web dashboards where you can translate the data that's in your proprietary databases into a product that an end user would find informative.
Did this graph right here, did this update as days went on and infections came in, or is this just a static picture?
This would have been updated on a quarterly basis. It could have been updated every 15 minutes if we wanted it to, but we only got new data from the rest of the nation once every 3 months.
So how long have you been doing analytical IQ?
Sure. So I've been an independent consultant for 2 years. And before that, I had been in healthcare for about 3 years. So I'm about 5 years into my healthcare journey, and we'll call it 8 years into my data journey.
Do you see growth as far as ever hiring someone else or taking interns or anything like that?
I did take interns this summer. It was hard. I have no idea what the future of my firm is, other than that I want to do valuable things for the people in healthcare. And because there's a lot of work, it's really tempting to hire people. So it's definitely something I've considered and something I'll keep thinking about. One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you guys is I think one of the reasons that healthcare isn't as good as it should be. And we could talk for hours about why healthcare, or about the symptoms of healthcare being not very good, like how much we spend on it and how mediocre our outcomes are here in the United States. The reason I wanted to talk to you guys about this is I think it is because healthcare as an industry is not very good at recruiting young technical people, I think that's a big reason that we're in the bind we're in, or that we're getting the mediocre results that we're getting. And so if I can recruit a couple of smart people to healthcare, I think that would help. And so I've considered stuff like doing coaching for young people. I've considered, helping establishment healthcare businesses, helping them recruit better. So those are all options I'm considering, but I'm, as you're highlighting, Brendan, I'm only one person. And so it's important for me to focus my efforts on where I can actually move the needle.
What was it like starting your own consulting company? Because that's something that, I've considered doing at some point in my career too.
Sure. I mean, the mechanics of it are incredibly simple. You put together a real simple website. You get yourself an email address. You tell people, I have started a consulting firm. The challenging part about running a successful consulting firm, in my opinion, is positioning yourself in an intelligent way. I'll give you an example. Who do you think has a more interesting life? The highly specialized engineer who only works on one little part of the rocket, or the maintenance guy who can fix just about anything? Those are two really different paths. But certainly the one who gets paid better is the highly specialized engineer who works on one little screw of the rocket engine. And so when you talk to people who know the consulting business well, they'll talk about a laser-focused positioning statement. I help people like this do this, or I help people like this get this result. So for me, I help POs, PHOs, and PHSOs make the transition from volume to value without leaving money on the table.
So what is that specifically?
Sure.
POs, PHOs.
Yeah, right. And so there are all these behind the scenes healthcare businesses that we in the public would have no reason to know even exist. But a PO is a provider organization or a physician organization. So these would be groups of doctors who get together to make a contract with an insurance company. I assume you guys all have a primary care doctor. I know when I was young, I never saw my primary care doctor, but you probably have a primary care doctor, and your primary care doctor does not just one-to-one go to the insurance company and say, hey, I'm going to see some patients. How much are you going to pay me? They would get together as a big group and negotiate collectively with the insurance company. And POs like that are at a distinct disadvantage in those business negotiations because, well, they're pretty good at delivering medicine. They're not necessarily good at projecting how much that's all going to cost, and whether the super complicated fee schedule that is being offered by the insurance company with the variable reimbursement depending on quality outcomes, projecting whether or not that's a good deal or what we would need to change in order to make more money in this incentive contract. That's the sort of thing that historically is not like directly in the wheelhouse of most provider organizations. And so that's what I love to help them with, because figuring out a business model to take advantage of a contract, that feels like a game to me. And I like games.
In a nutshell, if you had to wrap it up in a couple of statements, what suggestions would you make for students that are currently in like CIS degrees or the data analytics degree or the data analytics certificate? Oh, I'm sorry, like computer information systems or like CIT or computer information technologies. What suggestions do you make for students that have that degree path who are interested in the healthcare industry but don't know how to break into it?
In my opinion, the important thing is to show initiative. So, I mean, there are, especially if you're into data, there are thousands of publicly available data sets around healthcare. There's COVID-19 data sets are obviously really hot right now, but the federal government publishes amazing data sets that are all really clean and easy to work with. So if you want to show that you know healthcare data, there's a ton of healthcare data that's in the public domain that you could be using, creating analyses of, or programs to work with, and publishing on your own website, or just emailing or saving for your portfolio. So that's what I would suggest is if you're not getting traction in healthcare, number one, I would improve your subject matter expertise. And number two is, like I mentioned a few times, relationships or connections are going to be the thing that help you get that first job. And making connections, especially in the COVID era when we're all at home, making connections online is easier than it's ever been. LinkedIn is a place where a lot of professionals hang out. And so I would get to busy making connections and learning what you can from the vast amount of publicly available information.
So kind of on the continuing off of the availability of information, do you have any little tricks up your sleeves or any specific types of, like, say, like, for example, any open source like platforms that students could use, or like just any like little gold mines that not a lot of people know about? For example, my one of my professors mentioned like SoloLearn, for example, which is like a little bit of a newer company, and they do everything for free, and they offer free programs for a lot of students that kind of want to round out their programming skills or whatnot. Do you have any tips or tricks for us, or any secrets that would be a really good resource for students to be able to pursue outside the umbrella of our academic degree already?
I got a couple of ideas, but I'll tell you that the number one thing that has worked for me is not worrying about whether something is like overlooked or underlooked, is really just what makes me excited to figure it out. So I'll tell you, for me, one of those things early on was I really wanted to write a script that would play fantasy football for me. So I don't know if you guys play fantasy football, but if you do, you know that one of the most important things you do is every Tuesday, you have to pick up new players. You have to pick up good new players and drop the bad players from your roster. And so I spent months writing a script that would query the Yahoo Fantasy Football API and download all the data and figure out, okay, based on our scoring settings, how many points would each of these players score, and how much of those points I tried to estimate were luck versus skill of the player. How much were these players in good offenses? So maybe if this guy gets hurt, then who's the next one up? So I spent months working on this script, and what kept me going was this dream that I would have a script that would play fantasy football for me. I will confide that my script sucked at fantasy football, but the code base that I developed, I'm super proud of the work I did, and I did some great stuff there. So to me, I think the hack, if you want, is finding a project that makes you excited to work on it. And if you are looking for more resources, there's a program called DataQuest. And I've met the founder of DataQuest, and you do have to pay for it. And by the way, I think paying for things is actually a good idea because if you pay for it, then you'll be more mad at yourself if you don't do it. But DataQuest is a really good resource, and their blog has a bunch of free posts that can get you started on a bunch of different things. I've used their blog for a lot of my getting kicked off with Python stuff, and Python is the language I use most often now. Now, Brennan, when you mentioned before that you had something to ask, that was exactly when I lost internet connection. So do you mind repeating what it was you were interested in?
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, you mentioned that, you can go another little bit about the whole COVID situation and, your knowledge and work you've done with that.
Sure. Actually, it wasn't related to COVID at all. It's this idea of misaligned incentives in healthcare. Now, I'll make a real simple analogy. I'm going to illustrate this with an analogy. When you do a Google search, what are you looking for?
Something specific, usually, right?
Right. You're looking for the answer to a question, or you're looking for information, right?
Yep.
When you do a Google search, you volunteer a little bit of information to Google, and then they give you hopefully what you're looking for. And in your experience, do they usually give you what you're looking for?
Yeah.
That would be what I would call an example of mutual exchange of value, where you gave Google a little something that they wanted. What they want is they want to know what you want to know, and then they're happy to serve you with the information you wanted. And so you have both profited in this equation. Then thinking about Google's relationship with advertisers, well, what does the advertiser want? The advertiser wants to make more money. So they're happy to spend money to get a guaranteed click. And as long as their downstream processes work right, then the advertiser puts in money to Google and they get back more money. So that's also what we would call a mutual exchange of value. So then now let's think about a hospital. If you go to a hospital because you're extremely sick, what do you want?
Help.
Yeah. Oh, and sorry, I'll make one last point about Google, which is that if 1 million people make 1 million Google searches and every one of them gets the information they want, or, let's say 996,000 of them get what they want, are both the people and Google better off for that?
Yeah, I think so.
I would think so too. And, of course, there are problems with Google. They just just fired their leading researcher on AI bias. So like this might be a terrible time to use them as a positive example. But getting back to the point. So if you're in a hospital and you're sick, you want to be well, right? You would rather not die than have $5,000, right? Okay, great. Mutual exchange of value. We're done here. Healthcare works great. Except it doesn't, because if 1 million people go to the hospital and all have to pay $5,000 for their health, the more people who are using healthcare, does that mean we are more healthy?
Not necessarily.
No, it's exactly the opposite, really. If healthcare were about health, then we would never need to go to the hospital at all. So this is the problem in healthcare, which is that healthcare providers make the most money when people get very sick, and then they can fix them. And this is what we would call a misaligned incentive. There are very smart people who are working to fix this, but it's not an easy problem to fix. So right now the incentive is to wait until people get super sick and then make them healthy again. And the foods we eat play into this. Our lifestyle choices all play into this. But could we imagine a scenario where instead of getting paid for when you get sick, a doctor gets paid more when you're well than when you're sick? That's the grand vision we're working toward in healthcare, is that we would like people to get rich when people are healthy, as opposed to getting rich because people are sick. And in order to accomplish that, there are thousands of things that need to be done, some of them on the business side, which is where I work, but there's also the clinical side. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't tell you about this other project that our team did when I was working at this hospital, which is the thing about healthcare. And the reason I know I'll have job security forever is that every time I hear something about healthcare, somebody like from an area I don't work in, they say, "Oh, we can't do this yet." I'm like, "You can't?" And so one of these was there were patients in the hospital who had deteriorating kidney function. A lot of these were patients in the intensive care unit who, they were clinging to life. And they were on heavy duty medications. Well, some of those medications can kill you if you have compromised kidney function. But of course, the machines that monitor kidney function don't talk to the machines that dispense medications. But if you have an enterprise data warehouse, maybe those two systems can talk to each other. So our team built a system that in near real time would take results from the lab for kidney function and mash it against prescription data. And we could see, hey, these are the patients with compromised kidney function who are getting dangerous drugs. And this will send an alert to the pharmacist right now to potentially save that person's life. So for every piece of work I do on the business side, there's someone else doing work on the clinical side, or training machine learning algorithms to recognize tumors in in MRIs. There's all this cool work being done to fix sick people and to make it so that there are fewer people getting sick in the first place because we have the business models, right?
Wow, that's pretty interesting. I don't even know what to say. That's really cool though. So you helped write a program that did that with the kidney function?
I was peripherally involved with that one, but I was so proud of there are people who are hands-on, and this probably won't surprise you based on the tone I've taken with the rest of this conversation, but electronic health records are not friendly databases to work with. And so for them to find and parse the exact right pieces of data from the electronic health record, updating regularly in a way that was mostly mistake proof, I thought that was some really excellent data work.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like they need some data engineering to make it a little bit cleaner, huh?
Yeah, I mean, if somebody can write the next great electronic health record, I mean, that would be huge. I have friends who work at Epic, which is I don't even know if you guys would know what Epic is. Epic is one of the two big electronic health record companies that, so if you're in a hospital, they'll have one of two EHR systems, basically. It's Epic or Cerner. And the people at Epic, they have tens of thousands of employees writing this software. They make millions upon millions of dollars, and even their software, which is considered best in class, leaves a lot to be desired. And part of it is because the federal government and state governments require that so much of care be documented. Doctors got sued in the past for medical malpractice, which led to there being even higher standards for what must be documented. So the purpose of an electronic health record is not about the patient's health. It's about documenting every little thing about the care journey.
Wow. Well, I think I'm good. If anyone else has anything,
Yeah.
Or do you have anything else you want to touch on? Can we find you? Are you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn. You can find me on my website, analyticaliq.com, on my YouTube channel, podcast. It's what you asked about starting a consulting practice. That's the other thing you were supposed to do, is you're supposed to publish your work.
Okay, sweet. What's your podcast? Like, where do we find it?
Oh, sure. Anywhere you get podcasts, you find the Analytical IQ Healthcare Podcast. And and after you send me the recording of this, I'm going to turn this into an episode.
Awesome. Sweet. Yeah, that's exciting. I will definitely be checking that out too. Well, we appreciate you coming on. That was exciting and something interesting. We haven't seen anything in healthcare yet. And I think that's going to really open up the doors for many people to see, a different side of the data industry. So.
All right. Well, good to talk to you guys. Like I said, appreciate the enthusiasm. Hope, anybody who's watching this will consider healthcare, because like I said, healthcare needs a lot of help. I feel like I have unlimited job security. So if job security is a thing that you're interested in, I couldn't recommend healthcare enough. That's it for my presentation to the Data Analytics Association at Ferris State. I'm super grateful to Brennan Barr, Dr. Shu, and everyone else who participated. For you listening, if you're looking for a job in healthcare data, or if you're in healthcare and you want to recruit technical talent, you might like being on my email list. Now, I make it extremely difficult and expensive to join the email list. Just kidding. It's free, it's easy. You go to analyticaliq.com and drop in your email address. That's it. Until next time, thanks for listening.